As soon as he arrived, Steve needed a moment to compose himself. But before doing so, he threw his fist into the wall in front of him several times and let out a scream of anguish that reverberated through the cavernous walls he stood in. He took a few deep breaths before realizing he didn't know quite where he was yet, or whether such a display was even safe to show without attracting unwanted attention from who knows what, really. He looked at the display on his wrist to check the name of this place again. Morag, it said, which of course was no help at all. Time travel was bad enough, but space travel made things doubly uncomfortable for him. He cursed himself for allowing such an outburst without thinking it through first, but he had to admit that it would have been difficult to avoid even under worse circumstances. And what circumstances would those be, he wondered. One of the worst examples of humanity that had ever existed had stood in front of him and claimed to speak for one of the most important people in his life. And what kind of a just world would that ever make any sense? He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. The mission, he reminded himself. Focus on the mission. As always, it helped him regain his composure, and he took stock of his surroundings. Thankfully, Banner's coordinates seemed to be right on the money this time. The glow of the empty cylinder's force field emanated before him, practically screaming, "Insert power stone here," in bright, flashing neon. Steve let out a relieved sigh, hoping the other 4 stones would prove this easy to replace. He opened his containment unit and concentrated on the time stone, as Strange had taught him. After several moments and many beads of sweat, the stone began to float towards him. He then moved his hand counterclockwise in the direction of the power stone. Slowly, the orb-like metallic container reappeared around it. Steve let the time stone drop back into its container, and the orb fell to the ground with a sound somewhere between a clank and a thud.